Good morning from England. I've got it right this time. The last one I said I was in America for some reason. I've never even been to America. So there it was too early in the morning for me. So now I'm joined by a fellow Brit. So we're both working on I think it's BST plus one. So it's 11:11 on a Wednesday morning. Delighted to be joined by GB Williams, crime writer, well, everything writer, crime writer, standalone series, short stories, a lady after my own heart. I was nearly going to call you a girl then.
Call me
And
what you like, love.
from sunny Wales, uh,
Yeah,
and from a sunny Buckinghamshire. It's August, so one would hope that it's going to be relatively nice. But my birthday's in August. It was a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, fairly miserable. It can be in August, but that's England for you. So we're here to talk with Gail GB about your writing, and we'll go back to the beginning as we always do in these. This is our 23rd author spotlight about how you started writing, whether you started as a youngster and then it took over later, or whether you've always been writing. So how
I've
did you come to write?
I've always written. Even think even before I could write, I was making up stories in my head. I always loved books. I always wrote, um, but I had loads of things that I did when I was in late teens, early 20s, and sent off to places like well, Mills and Boon as it was then. Of course, it's Harlequin now. Uh, and what happened was most of them came back. We like your writing, we like your style, but you got too much plot and not enough romance. So I thought, right, okay, well, if I've got too much plot, I might as well turn to crime, which is
Right.
what I did.
That's
Um,
interesting. Yeah, Mills and Boon's very formulaic because a
it
lot of people
is,
think that writing for Mills and Boon is easy. And they when they celebrated their 100th anniversary, they did um, a documentary. It was a two-part. There was a drama and a documentary with
yeah,
Stella. I can't remember her surname now. Um, I should know. We're friends on Facebook, and she was sort of tasked to write a Mills and Boon, and you learn
it's
from that
hard.
hour actually how difficult it is because it's
Yeah,
certain number of pages you've got to have this and it's got to be within I think 500 words of a 50 word is the average,
yeah.
and so yeah it's not
I did,
easy.
I did. They did actually send me a list of rules, and it was like 2 pages long of what you had to hit to
Mm,
do a Mills and Boon. But
mm,
I thought, well, if it's too much plot and not enough romance, then I need to bring the plot out, which is why I turned to crime. But
mm.
I've always written. It's just something I've always done. I've even written and submitted fantasy fiction when I was younger.
Mm.
But yeah, then the usual things: got married, had kids, didn't wrote, but didn't do much with it
Sure.
until I finally self-published in I think 2012. But that book's long since been taken off, so people can't find it anymore. Thank God.
Oh, oh, it's one of those. Is it bottom drawer
Yeah,
book, is it?
it's actually quite a good book, but it never got
Mm.
properly edited,
Right.
so I took it off.
Well,
And
it's
if I look
to
at it now, it's too old to just not right anymore.
right. So it's maybe a one for your that you almost a sort of learning book
Mm.
because now you're dare I say it, having gone from girl to older and wiser, um that you know what the market like is. See, we
Bring back
both
the word
belong.
crone. I don't mind being called a crone.
Well,
Just means an old
that kind
wise
of
woman.
that makes me think of the Scottish play of Macbeth.
Oh yeah, well,
See, we're both in Brian Cohen's author ad school, which is brilliant. Not stepping on any
yes.
toes here, um, and writing to market. I kind of write what I like to write and what I like to read and enjoy doing. Um, but yes, there is very much a writing to market theme going on in the author ad school. So
Yeah,
it's interesting you say that.
it's not working for me at the moment,
Right.
unfortunately. I think they've changed so many categories on Amazon that I can't find the books that I want to read anymore, let alone
Oh,
what
really?
genre should I be in.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
it's not easy to write to market at all. But you
Mm.
can't. It's always difficult because when I think about writing to market, I also think, well, there was no market for what Tolkien wrote. There was no market for horror and steampunk until
mm,
Shelley, Mary Shelley and W.K. Jetta came along.
mm.
And I'm not going to break any ground on any new genre, but I don't want to be boring. I don't want to be
No,
that same book everybody else is
yeah,
writing.
yeah. And the thing is, you want to write for, ultimately, you want to write for yourself. You want to write what you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I think there is an audience for everything. So apologies to any poetry fans watching this. But years ago, when I lived in Northampton, I used to go to Starbucks. Other coffee shops are available on a Tuesday evening, and there'd be about 4 or 5 of us, 6 of us, and we'd start off by saying, "Oh, what's everybody?" And we'd just be there to write for a couple of hours, and we'd say, oh, "What's everybody writing?" And usually it was the next bit of the novel, next chapter of the novel. And one chap there, he said, "Oh, I'm writing bad poetry." And I said, "What, intentionally bad?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, he was the only traditionally published between us. And he said, "Yes, the biggest selling book that my publisher publishes is terrible poetry." And I shouldn't say this. Sorry, Americans, but America loves it. So what I'm getting at, in a very undignified way, is that there is an audience for everything. My flashes
Yes.
and short story collections, some of them are really weird, and I'm weird, and I love being weird. And my dog's official name is Lester Dree. You're weird. And they say people are like or dogs are like their owners, or owners are like their dogs.
Dogs.
And so I love weird, and there's a huge audience for weird.
I think the one thing that I think ad school's trying to say that is against this is you've got to find your market. And like you said, there
Yeah.
is a market out there for everything and everyone.
Mm,
It's
mm,
finding it that's hard. And I
mm.
think that's the hardest thing about writing is actually selling your books,
Yeah,
particularly
absolutely.
if you want to be a full-time make a living out of this. You
Mm,
have to be practical, you have to
mm,
be business-like,
mm,
and that is so against the nature of us creatives, and
mm,
it's really hard. So I understand why people say right to market, because you've got a ready-made audience and you can sell
mm,
it and it
mm.
works, but it's not working for me at the moment. That's all I
No,
can say.
I suppose we have to kind of do both. We write because one of mine's Dog Detective, so that's a fairly wide, although it's a niche of the crime.
Yeah.
It's a wide audience, um, but you have to be realistic that if you write a detective series, you're going to sell more books than if you write oh God, I'm going to get myself in so much trouble here. A cat cookery, um, private eye in deepest, darkest Mongolia, you're going to have
Yeah.
a narrower audience than if you
Yeah.
write a London-based or New York-based
Yeah.
detective
Of
series.
course, the other problem that we have with our particular genre is it's crime, and it is such a saturated market. To
Mm,
find your niche within that,
mm,
that can take a little time. I didn't know I was writing dark and the hard boiled crime until my publisher put me in that category. I
okay.
thought it was just crime.
Yeah. Was that
So
Bloodhound?
yes, yeah, it
Yes.
was
Yeah.
Bloodhound with the
Yeah.
Locked series. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I checked this morning because I edited whatever it was, 200 and something with them, and I wasn't your editor, sadly, so I've not read and pulled apart your writing at the time.
Now,
Um,
I'm fairly sure I
but
had
yeah,
an American editor, because there were
oh,
things
okay,
that were American in the reports
uh,
that I thought, yeah, that's the American audience, not the UK audience.
right, yes, that's not. I shouldn't say this. See, hey, that really an English author should be put with an English editor, because I have edited a small number of American books, and I say I'm an English editor. I've never been to America. I watch American TV, but I'm not the best person to edit your book,
Yeah,
because I won't know the terminology. And in the end, for one of the books for Bloodhound, I ended up creating a US UK dictionary of terms, because, and I've spent literally a day on every website going, compiling this thing just to make sure that everything was, that not just the spelling of colour and hood
yeah.
versus bonnet and everything, but phraseology as well.
Yeah,
but it's
it is different, and what you have to find as well is it's not just United States versus United Kingdom; it's what state you're in within the US. So
mm,
luckily, I've got quite a few US friends. So I keep going around saying, "Is this correct for your state?" I even had to
mm,
go to one. Is this correct for your religion? Because they were talking about
right.
Mormons,
Okay.
and I didn't know enough. So because I also edit as well.
Mm,
So yeah, you do have to check an awful lot when you're checking. But you say that about the States. I'm sure that we don't realise that we do it in the UK as well, because I
mm,
know I'm from Kent, which obviously is southeast of England. I
mm,
live in South Wales. I live in Swansea.
mm,
I know there's huge differences between the way people talk here, the way people that talk in Kent, which is why in my book, The Chair, I actually had to specifically give people different mannerisms in their talk so that the Kentish lot and the lot from London sound
mm,
like they're from London, whereas the
right.
Welsh lot sound like they're Welsh. So it was quite interesting because I've what has happened is I've actually picked up more Welshisms than I would have thought because my accent hasn't changed,
No.
but the way that I speak does because the way that
Mm,
everybody around me speaks has changed.
mm.
So
But
yeah,
at least, yeah, you have the experience of both, though. You've spent
yeah,
long enough in both places to know that you've, even though you get it checked by someone else, you've lived there long enough
yeah.
to um to get have the experience of
Lived in.
that.
I'm Wenglish now. See, I've lived in
Okay.
Wales more than I lived in England. So
Oh
yeah,
right.
I'm called
That long.
Wenglish now.
Oh, right. Can you speak any Welsh?
Uh, no,
No.
no.
I think it's nice that it's coming back though. I think
Yeah.
the Welsh, I don't know whether it's the
I
Welsh
wouldn't say it's
government
coming
or the,
back, dear, because for the Welsh it never went away.
well, no, absolutely. But
Yeah.
it's the what's the word I'm looking for? Should know.
The
Um
resurgence of it is as good.
yes, and
And I,
it's there's more support for it, and people want to, I think now.
yeah, I actually do have characters who speak Welsh, but luckily I
Mm.
also have Welsh speaking friends. So I've
And
got this off
check.
of Google. Is it actually
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And
Well,
thankfully, yeah,
you can always tell because there are a lot of I spend more time blocking people on Facebook, these digital creators, with the fake profiles, and say and there's a load of us who keep popping up. um uh, public service announcement, one of them was, and how to spot a fake marketeer who'll, you know, there are a lot of good, and that's the trouble, there are a lot of good ones out there. But there are so many of them,
mm,
and they've picked up their language from Google Translate, which is wonderful. I use it often, and it's
yeah,
fabulous. And the app is brilliant because you can literally, if we were in Germany a couple of months ago, and if you hover your phone, open the app, hover your phone over something written, it will literally replace it by the English version.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
it's a lot of things like that with translation. You just need to go and get checked by somebody who actually knows.
yes, because it's colloquialism, isn't it?
Yeah,
We just,
yeah,
if you've got English characters saying English things in your English, you'll have them to a point, because it's quite often people will ask, students will ask me, or I'll have editing clients who put colloquialism in there, um, and and I just say this is a little step too far. You can
yeah,
get away with it up to a point by having two characters from different areas, and the other one not understanding, so the first one has to tone it down. But not only are you not going to have um, native English readers, you're going to have English, not non-English speaking based readers, who it's not their first language, and so
yeah.
you need to make it easy without dumbing it down. So finding a
Yeah, and that
balance
it's a
between the
very
two.
fine line that though to
Mm,
get that right. Yeah,
mm,
and it's quite interesting on an intellectual scale, but it's sometimes you feel as a writer that you're being compressed, if you like. You're
mm,
not, but what you're doing is not. You're taking off the sharper edges that might put people off,
mm.
but
Because you could
because you've
always
got
have
to
a
be understood.
glossary at the back.
Yeah. Well, whenever I use a phrase in Welsh, I then explain it in English what they've actually said to one another.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's nobody loses out. But I don't like these books where if you've got dual language, it's all written in English as if it's all said in English, even though it's clearly not.
mm,
And that I find quite difficult, is because
mm,
you don't quite know, were they speaking Welsh to start with, or are they speaking English at that point?
mm,
And one of the things I love about writing about in Wales and people who do speak English and Welsh is things like Hinterland, where it was a great series on TV that you had actually versions in English and in Welsh. But in the English version, the lead character couldn't speak Welsh, so it all
right.
had to be explained. So when they did go into
Mm,
Welsh, you were often stood there like the main character, like what on earth is going on? But then it
mm,
had to be explained, and I like that because that's what happens
mm,
in real life. If
yeah.
somebody doesn't talk the language, there's no point in me writing a scene with an interpreter having interviewing a Polish guy who'd come
Mm,
across
mm,
and then trying to write that in Polish. I'd have to say right, okay, the interpreter's there, they're doing the interview, and then
mm,
have it explained because I
mm,
can't write Polish.
mm,
I can barely write Welsh. I can barely write English sometimes. So it is interesting to use different languages in books, and
mm,
hopefully it will make things like the fact that we live in a multilingual society more
mm,
acceptable to people.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the job of a writer and certainly an editor is to have it's the old show not tell, to avoid the exposition where you've got one character and they both know what is happening and what it means. But remind me what such and, because you see that so often in TV, on
Yeah,
TV. Oh yeah, remind me what her name was again, or which is fair enough because people forget names. But when you know that they both know the information, but it's just being given to the reader for the reader's benefit,
yeah.
um, then we do stumble. So you're a full-time writer now?
I am, yeah. I got made redundant during COVID and I've never bothered to go and
Uh,
get another
oh,
job.
okay. Yeah, see, one door closes, as they say,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
one of us. Are you fairly strict with yourself? Do you?
It's
Oh,
not possible to be strict with myself here. I live with a husband and a daughter, a mature daughter. She's an adult. They both work shifts and they work different
ah,
shifts. So there is no way that I can say, right, 9 to 5, I am a writer,
mm,
because I have to be flexible for everybody else in the house. So
mm.
I write, I'm what I call a martini writer. Remember the old advert for martini? Anytime, any
Yes,
place, anywhere? That's how I
yes.
write.
That's a great thing about it, isn't it? We can literally, as long as we've got pen and paper or a laptop or something, a phone with the notes to dictate on
Exactly.
is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've brought myself this year. It's not a file of facts, but excuse the brand name, other files with papers are
Yes,
available.
organizers, yes.
Organisers, thank you, that's the
Yep,
word.
okay.
I've brought myself an organiser this year with pull-out so that I can take that one book with me wherever I go, and
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what story, what genre I'm writing in, I can make my
right.
notes. Because I
Okay.
write in multiple genres, I'm often got 2, 3 books on at a time. And if I think, oh yeah, this is what I need to do with them, I
Yeah,
can write it down and then put it in the right place within the organiser.
yeah.
It's quite
No, I
sad,
have
but
an iPhone which has a notes app on it, and I have a Gmail account, and so and I've mentioned this to a lady the other day, and she uses notes, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know that. It's brilliant." So if you hook the notes up to point to your Gmail, you can then just copy and paste. And so I tend to do just dictate, and I prefer to dictate, although I have to double check everything, especially before I send out an email or a text message, and
yeah,
check
I,
because
I dictate because I have RSI. After years and years of
right.
working in admin, I've got RSI.
Mm,
So when I've written stuff out or typed it on, I will often, obviously, if I've typed it onto the phone, can't cut and paste.
mm.
But yeah, I often dictate. I have some absolute bloopers when I dictate. Sometimes it makes me laugh. Um,
Well, I
yeah,
tried Jag when I back in the pre-Mac day, 2011. I got my first Mac, and as they say, once you Mac, you never go back.
you
And I
can't
had a
afford to, love.
PC. Yeah, well, yeah, and I had I bought some Dragon software, and I found, because I was a secretary for years, and found that I was quicker typing than it was to dictate it and then amend so much of it. And the trouble
Yeah.
is, if you dictate too much, you then forget what you've written, especially if you're writing fiction. And you think, oh, what was the? I don't even know what that means. You know,
Yeah.
the gardener's yellow in spring. When you're not actually writing about garden or spring, but it's something completely different.
Yeah, I only do that if I've written it longhand because I've written it outside. But what I find now,
Mm,
I used Dragon software years and years ago, and I just couldn't get it to work well
mm,
for me.
mm,
So now I've discovered that Word actually has an inbuilt built dictation service. And I find that just as good as any other. But
mm,
again, I have an accent because I'm British and it's working on American accents.
right.
So we get the occasional word. It can't cope with any of my Welsh names.
Mm,
It can't cope with any of the place names, the person names. And obviously, if somebody says even something as simple as diolch, which is thank you in Welsh,
mm,
I've got to type that in. It can't cope with that sort of
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
it does save my arm and the
yeah,
strain. So yeah,
yeah,
I quite like it.
yeah. You can keep an eye as you go along, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. So you write novels and short stories and standalones. Do you have a favourite
I actually do. I shouldn't. It's like having a. Do you have a favorite child?
child? Yes.
You know?
If you
I
only have
do
one,
actually.
it's quite easy.
Yeah. Well, I've got two kids, so no, it's
Okay.
not.
No, not so
Um.
easy then. Yeah.
Yeah, but with my books, I love all of my books, and I do have a favorite character, and it is Charlie Bell from the Locked series. But my favorite actual single book is The Chair, which is the one that's based between Cadair Idris and London. Because it's self-contained, because it's a standalone, and you don't have to go anywhere else with it. And I just love those characters because I said everything I wanted to about those characters in the one book, and that worked for me, and I loved that
Right.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you done with the other two? Because the Elaine Blake there's two so far.
No, the
The
Elaine Blake
Locked.
duology, that is it.
Okay.
Um, and I have to say, it was originally a single book, but it was just a very long single book. So my
Right.
publisher asked me to split it in two, which I did.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I like that one. So yeah, that is complete. Just so Elaine has done that. But good news on that, we're getting new covers. So I'm going to be announcing
Ah.
new covers on that soon.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, it's that's done. Locked is almost done.
Mm-hmm.
The trilogy was obviously complete. Started off with Bloodhound, but that's finished now.
Mm-hmm.
I've just brought out a prequel called Locked Away,
Yes.
which
It's
people
wonderful.
can actually download for free if
Right.
they
I
are
wondered if that
into.
was your reader magnet.
It is my reason.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We know
Um,
all about reader magnets, don't we,
I do.
from author ad school?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's free at the moment. And then to come out shortly is another short. It's a novella rather than a short story,
Mm.
which is called Unlocked, which actually
Aha.
rounds off the entire series, but also
Right.
introduces one of the characters from my next. Hopefully, it will sell enough to become a series, but at the moment, it's
Mm.
one book.
Okay. And have you got any characters from your other books that you're bringing back? Maybe a minor character that you thinking
um,
you might bring back?
the character in Unlocked, the character whose name is Ruth Atkins, Detective Inspector Ruth Atkins, she meets obviously Charlie and Piper, and it turns out that Superintendent Broughton has a particular connection with her. So those three will have connections at for things that
Right.
happen later on in that series. As I
Mm.
say, but if that series goes ahead, because like everybody else, if it doesn't sell, I can't spend the time on it. So,
Mm.
but yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. It has an unusual aspect to one of the other uh, police officers there that
Mm.
might intrigue some people.
Mm. Watch this space.
Yeah.
So you're an editor yourself. What's your process when you I know because you've written several books, have you found that your writing, this is probably a silly question, that your writing has improved the more you write? And are you a plotter? This is a multi-part question. I hope you have a better memory than me. Do you plot or do you plant or a bit of both? And do you find that when you get to the end of the book, it's come out pretty much how you expect?
Let me answer the last one first. No, never.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I do plot, but very, very loosely.
Mhm.
So I know if I'm, say, doing a murder, which most of my books are murder investigations, I know what was killed the person and what clues they need to find in order to figure out A, how they were killed, and B, who did it. So I know the clues, but I don't always know how they're going to get there. And even when I think I know how they're going to get there, somebody will say something, or a character will pop up out of nowhere and say, oh, this thing, and they'll go completely off their own way. And I think it was Stephen King says, don't force your characters to do something, just let them go and follow them and report.
Absolutely.
So oftentimes that's what I do. As in another series that I write, as you know, I write as Gail, as Abby Barden as well. I've got a 5-book series in steampunk. There was a character that was supposed to be 2 lines at the beginning of the book and 2 lines at the end of the book. He ended up a main character because he was just too good. He was too good to lose. Yeah. So I just let my characters go off and do what they want, and occasionally I'll steer them back. So I start out with a plan and then just forget to follow it. So, and yes, obviously, I was going to say, obviously, yes, my writing improves. But tell you the thing that improves your writing faster than writing is editing and learning how to edit.
And so who sees your book? Take us through. So when you've finished a book and you're happy with it, who sees it? Who's your alpha reader and beta readers before it goes to an editor?
I actually send out to structural editors. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a bit of a bugbear between my husband and I. He's never read one of my books.
Okay.
He reads some of the short stories sometimes, but yeah, no, usually the first person to read my books is my editor.
Right. Yeah. And see, my husband reads science fiction. He does read crime. He loves the Mick Herron Slough House series, and when O. Henry, my first dog detective, was free, I gently persuaded him, happy wife, happy life, is to download that and read it, and he did, and he said he enjoyed it. He hasn't downloaded any of the others, but he's an avid reader. So, but I just, it'd be nice if they read, but he's very supportive in other ways. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, my husband, I couldn't do what I do without my husband. But yeah, it's just I write darker than he likes to read. So yeah.
Well, maybe had you done the Mills and Boon, maybe that he could have been.
I don't think he'd read books. No, but
the thing with Mills and Boon readers is that I get why it's formulaic, because it's like anything. You pick up a book with a crime book, and readers want what they expect.
Yeah, I think that's which is back to the whole right to market argument. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with Mills and Boon is, and I've read hundreds and hundreds of them over the years, what I like is it is pure escapism. That's not my life. It's not going to be reflected in my life, which is not to say my husband isn't romantic, because he can be, but it's just, I like to know with the Mills and Boon, I'm going to get my happy ending.
Absolutely.
But with crime, I can't guarantee you're going to get your happy ending, which is why I had to write the unlocked novella, because I had so many complaints about what happens in lockdown. Right. So I had to explain why it will happen that way.
You still have to have in a series, though, this better than anybody, but when you have to, each book in a series has to be a standalone with some resolution at the end, but then there are threads in it. The main characters, for instance, you learn more about them as the books go on. So you're free. Exactly. You're free now to carry on and do a whole new thing. As GB Williams.
Yeah. So next one is Queen of Cups, which I think comes out on the 4th of November.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I like the sound of that. And having been published by different publishers, how do you find the marketing process? Because obviously, if you're self-publishing, you have to do everything yourself. Yeah. If you're published by, whether it's a small press or small indie or
even if you're published by one of the big 5, unless your name is something like Richard Osman, you will have to do your own marketing. Yes. There is no getting away from it, which is one reason why I actually now self-publish almost entirely. Okay. But I have had a lot of help from the small presses. Small presses, I think, are actually possibly more helpful on the marketing than some of the big presses. But regardless of what stage you are, it is you as an author who has to go out and sell you and your books.
Mm.
So yeah, I find it really difficult because I am somebody who would sit at home in a box in my room and just ignore the entire world if I could. So you have to put on a mask, go out, be happy, be nice, do things like this, which is completely out of my comfort zone. So I do festivals, I do book fairs, and I've got an event actually on the 7th of September in Cardiff Library, if anybody wants to join us there. Some big Welsh names on that one.
Brilliant.
So yeah, it's marketing is hard. It just is hard. It's the hardest part about writing your book is selling it. So I find it quite difficult. I have a newsletter people can sign up for if they want as well. So it's finding that way to communicate with your audience and how best to do that. And it's one of those ones that I don't sometimes. I end up writing letters to myself in a way. My newsletters are for me because I figure my writers are going to be kind of like me, or at least have something in common with me, or else they're not going to like my writing. So yeah, it's
and why,
hard.
Why would they sign up to the newsletter if they're not interested in hearing what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly.
One
you do
hopes.
you get a free book out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's yeah. So I do my newsletters, which reminds me I've got to go and do one. But yeah, and festivals, of course. It's most people won't know this, but I'm actually the organizer for Gwyl Cran Cymru Festival, which is Wales' only crime-focused literary festival. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff behind the scenes too.
That's a lot of work.
Yes, an awful lot. There's a committee.
Yes.
It's not me on my own. Obviously, there is a committee behind me. So yeah.
Even so, being a chair, I've been a chair of writing groups, and that's fairly hard going. And I've been on committees, and yes.
Because before Phil Gwyn Jones gets upset, I'm not the chair. I'm the organizer. He's the chair.
Okay. Yeah. But I think anything, even if you meet once a month, there's it's like the swan, the top half of the swan is your monthly meeting. Yeah. And then the time in between is the paddling furiously, trying to get, especially because I think once if you have a yearly festival, once the one that I'm involved in, Beacon Lit in July, once the festival's over, you're already planning the next one. You've booked the school or the venue for the next year or several years ahead, and you're getting your authors, finding your authors who'll come for nothing or next to nothing. And
well, that's one thing we do pay anybody who appears. We do pay them because we believe that authors, or being an author's job. So and giving your time up to something, that's your time. You could be writing, you could be making more money. So we do actually pay the authors who appear on the festival, which we think is just the right thing to do. And as authors, it would be nice if we're paid to go to other festivals. But that's one of those things that every festival does it differently.
Yes.
So yeah, but no, it's
yes, we do. We have a nominal amount, but we do.
Yeah, it's not the easiest of things, but it'll grow. And what is quite difficult for us is because we do want to be inclusive, we alternate between in-person festivals and then online festivals. And so we try to we can't put too much of the in-person festival online because then that takes away the reason for people to come in person. But also we do put some of it online because we always recognise there are people who cannot make it to a festival. We've got people from Canada and Australia who we know follow and help the festival, support the festival. They're not going to be able to come over to Wales every other year. So of course we do try to film some and put that out. So yeah, it's an interesting task, let's say.
And isn't the internet just a wonderful, it has its ups and downs, but we wouldn't be here chatting now without it.
No, it is. A lot of people, though, I do know, got zoomed out after COVID.
Yes.
And, so yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's difficult, but these things happen. You just have to carry on.
But then you have the likes of TikTok, where that's born from videos. So it's in small doses. It's finding its way back.
Yeah, I've got to sign up for TikTok. There's lots of people come on to Facebook that I watch on the reels, but the reels always cut the TikTok short. so you
Right.
never get the full TikTok. So I need to go over and
Okay.
join TikTok and
Yes,
get on there.
I signed up. Well, I downloaded the app months ago, and all good intentions. And then about a month ago, I signed up and put up when these started going, put up a video of promoting these spotlights.
Yeah.
So I need to do, yes. I have the whole YouTube thing to look forward to. Put these on
Yeah,
YouTube and
YouTube
get
is fun.
into.
Good, we use that for the festival as well.
Mm,
But yeah, I'm finding that there is certain areas of social media which I shall not name,
mm.
but I'm moving away from those and going to like the sewing corner, shall we say?
Okay, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, it's social media is hard, and you
Mm.
have to find the right thing. There's still an awful lot of authors on social media, so yeah, and hopefully there's still a lot of readers on social media.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so many people on when you go into the groups, to saying, fight, recommend something to read, and some of it's, I would say digital creators because there are a lot of good digital creators out there, but I spend a lot of time blocking those who are clearly not as genuine as some,
Yeah,
and it's just a way for authors to for them to find authors to then promote their services to, which is a sneaky way of doing it. But there are quite a few of us who then bomb the feed with public service announcements. You know, if you're being asked to do this, that, and the other, and this is what they look like, then the chances are just be careful. And
yeah.
that's all you can say, really.
And if you've got to pay, double check and triple check.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. I don't really want to end on there. What are you doing today?
What am I
Are
doing
you doing
today?
any? Yes.
Actually, my
Let's
husband's
end on.
just got up, so next thing I'm doing is making coffee.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
but
Yeah,
no,
no,
today,
I was going to say I can totally relate because my husband's working shifts, but and work shifts and which is night shifts and mornings and late. So and it rotates on a 5 weekly thing. So that's why these slots tend to be at different times of the day. Plus
yeah,
also
yeah,
to help America and Australia.
yeah.
But yeah, so I have to schedule
It's
it
kind of
around
hard
him.
to when you have a household of shift workers. It is you
Mm,
do have to be more flexible. It's just one of the things that happens. But
mm,
now, on the positive side, I'm at the moment I'm working on book covers for Queen of
okay.
Cups, which is the new. I'll give you a hint. We have a psychic detective coming up.
Ooh,
I'm just about to send off a full manuscript to a structural editor of an even newer dual pairing, which is still they're still detectives, they're still police officers,
mm,
but they are investigating. Basically, it's the X Files without calling it the X Files, but in the UK. So
oh,
that's fun, and that's a lot lighter than the other stuff that I've been writing because that one is
mm,
actually aimed at making you laugh a bit, and this
yeah,
is a whole new thing for me trying to make people
yeah.
laugh.
So humour is really hard,
Yes,
especially if you're
it's
writing it for different nationalities, because we
yeah.
have a very different sense of humour.
Or this one's based a lot on sarcasm because
Right.
that's where I come from. So
Yeah.
people may still find it quite hard, but there is a definite dark humour that it
Mm,
hits.
mm,
So that's just been finished. And other than that, if they sell, they both have the potential to become series.
mm,
That's the Queen of Cups and the untitled. I haven't actually figured out a title. I'm terrible for titles. I don't know about anybody else,
right.
but title
Well,
is the last
I
thing I figure out.
okay. I occasionally a client will say to me, "I'm stuck for a title," and so when I'm going through, sometimes a phrase will leap out, and I my shorts and flashes are mostly from writing a short story a day for Story a Day May at .org. Back in started that 2011, I think 11, 12, 13. I did those, and and I'd quite often not just get an idea and run with it and then get to the end and think, oh yes, actually those 3 or 4 words would make a great title.
Yeah,
And sometimes I'll edit a book and it's easier if I'm working. I work primarily now with authors directly. Still work with publishers, but mostly
yeah,
with authors. And so I'm more at liberty to say, well, actually, I think this title doesn't really represent the whole story. It might grab the reader, but then the reader will expect a different book. Um,
yeah.
and here are half a dozen suggestions. And sometimes they'll go with one of those. Sometimes they'll stick with the original, and other times they'll think, oh yes, actually you're right, I'll come up with something else, and then they come up with something totally different that
Yeah,
does work.
I think titles and blurbs are the hardest thing. Writing the 75,000 words of the novel, easy compared to
Yeah,
writing a
it's
title or a
funny
blurb.
how often that comes up in these
Yeah,
chats. Writing is
yeah,
the easy bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I've got that. So this afternoon is basically just planning what the next book is going to be, which literally don't have a clue right now. It's just like, I know how that ended of that book. What am I going to do with this pair now? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's
But
my
isn't that
afternoon.
fun? Isn't pantsing fun?
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
well, with the first ones I pantsed completely. I just got an idea, and then just see what comes out. But the
Charlie Bell
more
was Charlie Bell was supposed to be a 200-word character sketch for a course that I was doing. I thought, well, I got so much more to say. I can make this into a short story. I've got so much more to say. I can make this into a novel. And now he's an
the
increasingly
legs.
badly titled trilogy because I've now got a prequel and I've soon got the epilogue, if you like, coming
Yeah,
out. So
yeah,
yeah, but from little acorns, as they say.
absolutely. You never know how long their legs are going to be, as we say.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just final question. Which software do you use for your covers?
I don't. I use cover
Okay.
designers
Oh, okay. Yeah.
for for my Aether Chronicles, which is the Abby Barden series. That was done by Deranged Doctor Designs, which who
Okay.
are
Nice.
brilliant. I
Sounds
absolutely,
steampunky.
it is very, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the moment for my crime stuff, I'm using getcovers.com.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
You need crime.
with a lot of things, you have to give your cover designer a brief, and coming up with that brief is sometimes the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do graphic design. Graphic design is not
Right.
me. Yeah,
Okay.
I do words, not pictures.
Yes. And then a lot of back and forth thereafter until you're happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's understandable. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. And we shall take your pick as to whether we come back to you as GB Williams or Abby, and chat to you another time. So thank you
Yeah,
very
that would be
much.
lovely.
And we've been very lucky with the internet. We had issues earlier
Don't
on, but
curse it.
it's been well, we only need another 5 seconds. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. So we'll hopefully chat with you again in October.
Hope
Thank you
soon.
so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.